Movie Crusaders, and welcome to our latest episode. My name's Sean Wasserkrug, and today we're going to be reviewing one of my more anticipated films of 2023, Scream 6. Now, for anyone who follows this channel knows that I am a fan of the Scream franchise, of the old school four, Scream 1 through 4. I enjoyed all of them except for Scream 3. I don't think anyone really liked Scream 3. And when Scream 5, or just Scream 2022 came out last year, obviously myself and my co-star Brian were really excited to see it. While Brian thought the movie was a solid film, myself had some real issues with last year's Scream film. I thought it was widely overrated. I thought the ending was atrocious. I thought the killers were ridiculous, mainly the Amanda killer. And I felt that it was a step back in the Scream franchise. Now, while I did like the two new leads in Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera, who plays Sam, it was the plot and the story and some of the things that happened in that film that really made it not click with me. And even rewatching it last night before watching Scream 6, if anything, I actually liked it less than I did when I first saw it. There's just a lot of issues with it, and I feel like a lot of people have some kind of like rose-colored glasses when watching that Scream film because they were just so excited to see Scream come back that they really did not want to acknowledge or pay attention to the real issues that happened with that film. Going into Scream 6, though, I actually thought this film looked like an improvement based off of last year's film, moving it out of Woodsboro and into a New York atmosphere. The first trailer we got to see of this one makes it look more brutal, more stakes, more of everything that I think could elevate this film to be better than last year's Scream, and maybe even make it one of the better Scream films in general. Now, a lot of that obviously depends on the plot and the characters and everything about that. So I actually went into Scream 6 with higher expectations, even though I really disliked last year's film. And I am happy to say Scream 6 delivers. It is probably, as of right now, my second favorite Scream film, behind the first one. Scream 2 is right there. I really love Scream 2. And I think Scream 6 actually works on almost every level possible. The one thing to me that actually works really well is the returning cast, the way they dub themselves in the film, the core four. I think Melissa Barrera, who a lot of people shit on her and her performance in the first film. I actually really liked her performance in the film. I think she elevates the character even further in Scream 6. I think she does a fantastic job as Sam. Jenna Ortega, who's been on a rocket ship of just stardom since Scream came out last year. Obviously, she's given more to do in this film than she did in last year's movie, and she basically takes a hold of that and runs with it. Jenna Ortega has some great moments with Tara. Tara and Sam's relationship goes through some, bumps, but it works together. Their chemistry together as sisters works incredibly well. Jasmine Savoy Brown as Mindy, she's basically playing the same character as last movie, but for some reason, it works better for me this time around than it did last year. And to me, one of the MVPs of this, Mason Gooding as Chad. He kind of felt very one note in last year's film, but he had so many more levels to the character of Chad and adds so much more heart to the group that I rooted for Chad in this. Much like Randy in the previous films, or even Dewey, we all love Chad. I can't think of anyone who wouldn't have liked Chad in this movie. And these four characters finally have reached that level that we wanted, or that we got with Sydney, Gail, Dewey, and Randy, to the point where we don't want to see these characters die. They've reached that level of love through these two films, that we actually don't want to see any of them perish. Whether they do or not, you'll have to watch Scream 6. Gail, Courtney Cox is back as Gail. No Sydney this time. They do mention her a couple times in the film, and they basically kind of write her off, saying that she's staying away from this so that way she can protect her family, which makes sense. Gail's Courtney Cox, it's a rough start based off of the events of what they say happens, because this takes place a year after the events of the last film. Obviously, this is 14 months after the last film came out. The story that they have Gail put together in this based off of what we have in the last year doesn't really work for me that much. It feels very off. It feels very Gale, but it feels very kind of backwards, like very backwards stepping and towards of where her character was at the end of the last film. So it kind of rubbed me the wrong way what they did with the Gale character there. But the Gale scene with Ghostface, which is in the trailer, so it's not a spoiler by any means, that scene is awesome. It is really well choreographed. It is incredibly well done. It's one of the better fight sequences in any of the Scream films, and I actually really, really enjoyed it. And I give Courtney Cox a hell of a lot of credit for that scene, as well as the stunt coordinators and what they do with that, because that was actually a really well done scene. New cast members. You've got Dermot Mulroney, who plays Detective Bailey. You've got Jack Champion from Avatar, who plays Ethan Landry. You got Josh Segura, who I loved as Pug in She-Hulk. He plays Danny. You got Liana Libretto. I'm probably saying that incorrectly. I apologize. Who plays Quinn, who's the roommate of Sam and Tara. And you also got Devin Nakota, who plays Anika, who's the love interest for Mindy in the film. And of course, you also got Tony Revolori, Samara Weaving. Hayden Panettiere comes back as Kirby. We all loved Kirby from Scream 4, and she is awesome to have back. I wish there was more Kirby. Every time she is on screen, you just love everything Kirby has to say. So it was a welcoming surprise seeing Kirby back. Not that it was a surprise, we knew she was in the movie, but every time she was on screen, you just remembered how much you loved Hayden Panettiere, and I wish we see her in more things. The cast is solid. There are certain cast members I wasn't the greatest fan of in the film, mainly Jack Champion. But he's fine. It's just, he just feels off compared to the rest of the cast. But in terms of what everyone wants to see, which is the blood, the gore, the attacks, the kills, the scream of it all, I think this movie incredibly elevates itself in terms of the brutality of the kills, the basically how they choreograph the attacks, and everything in this film works incredibly well. It's brutal. It's efficient. It's a scarier version of Ghostface than we've ever seen before. This Ghostface seems just more powerful, more brutal, and almost like a shark when it smells blood in the water. It just keeps coming over and over and over again without any resistance, without any stopping points. This is a Ghostface to not mess with. Like I said, the kills are way more brutal this time around. The attacks are expertly well done. The New York aesthetic, I think, works incredibly well. The subway scene that we see in the trailer, so much more to that than what we did see in the trailer, and it works incredibly well for the horror aesthetics. This is also taking place right around Halloween, so you got New York in Halloween time. People are constantly dressed up. That element works incredibly well. The opening sequence, which is about 15 minutes long. It's a pretty long sequence for a Scream film. It's different and it's unique. It harbors back to the originals, but also elevates it and does something different with it that we weren't expecting. And I actually really, really enjoyed that and liked that. There's a lot that I loved about Scream 6. I enjoyed a good chunk of this. Now, obviously, when we get to the big part, which is the killer reveal, which I'm not going to say who or what or, how many or anything like that. But I didn't dislike the killer reveal. I thought it was fine based off of the story and based off of the elements of the film that we were getting. It was more, and this happens in every Scream movie, where they have to do the huge ass monologue where they have to explain why they're doing this and why they're doing that, and basically catching all the people who aren't paying attention to the movie up to speed. That's the part that really doesn't quite click or work for me overall. It wasn't necessarily the reveal of the killer. It was more the execution and the motive of the killer that didn't quite work for me. It doesn't ruin the film by any means. It just was kind of like you had me, but I'm not fully buying into it. But I like who they reveal it to be. I don't dislike it. I mean, like I said, I gotta teeter around this because I'm not trying to spoil anything. It's a 50-50 wash. There's stuff to like about it. There's stuff not to like about it. Whether the good outweighs the bad, maybe I'll figure that out here in a couple weeks. I have to sink it a little bit more. Right now, I didn't hate who the reveal was. It was more the execution and motives of it that didn't work for me. The one big complaint I've got, if there is a complaint out of anything on this, because like I said, I really did enjoy this movie. Like I said, it's my second favorite Scream film. They've really got to figure out a way to stop making the characters knife-proof. I'm going to say knife-proof because they're definitely not bulletproof. There are so many times in this film, and you can say much about in the last movie as well, where these characters are taking some incredibly brutal stabs. Stabs that would kill people. Stabs that, if you're not dying, you're bleeding out and dying. And they're taking these stabs, and yet they're walking around or having full-on conversations not even minutes later, not grimacing in pain, not looking like they're basically bleeding out and getting weak. They're acting like it's a scratch. And it's like, no, you've got stabbed in an area that is deadly to you, and you're climbing and running and you're fighting and you're doing all this. Yes, you can chalk that up to adrenaline. Trust me, I know all about powering through pain with adrenaline. But when you're bleeding out, and you're not even reacting to you bleeding out, you're reacting to a stab to the stomach or a stab into the back, which is rupturing through your kidneys and stuff, as a mosquito bite. It really kind of takes the element of fear of the well-being of some characters out of the window. It's no different, and Brian brought this up in his little Letterboxd review, which if you guys want to follow Brian on Letterboxd, it's on the information below this video. They're starting to feel like Fast and the Furious, where you can literally be surrounded by 15 guys with machine guns and they shoot at you, yet somehow they all miss you. Or you can fall out of a car 100 feet in the air and land perfectly fine and not have a broken bone in your body. These characters, I'm not going to say which ones, but these characters should have died, should have bled out, or should have just been incredibly injured. And yet they're just walking around, having conversations, fighting, climbing, running, doing all this stuff that nobody can take. No one can handle that unless you're like The Rock. And even then, I think The Rock would fall down and probably die. So it kind of takes the believability out of it, which to me, just you're watching, you're like, okay, well, shit, that character's gonna die, or shit, that character's dead. And it's like, oh no, now they're gonna have their own monologue, and their face is not selling that they're bleeding out or that they just got stabbed by a 6-inch blade in their stomach or shoulder or what have you. You know, they look like they're A-okay, and that just, they need to change that. They need to stop that because it really ruins the atmosphere that you've been building for the past 2 hours when you take the element of death out of the equation. Overall, outside of that huge nitpick for me, I think the film elevates itself to everything better than they did in last year's version of Scream. I think it's one of the better Screams. I think it's one of the better ghost faces in terms of its brutality, scariness, and just attacks and deaths in general. This is a big win for me. It helped me put faith back in the Scream franchise. Do I think they're going to do another one? Of course they are. Do they teeter to that to one way? I'm not going to say here or there. But for me, Scream 6 is a win, a huge upgrade compared to last year's one, which I was greatly disappointed in. And like I said, right now, this is currently my second favorite Scream film, just narrowing out Scream 2. I'm going to give Scream 6 an 82%. Recommendations, if you like the Scream films, you're going to already see this, so I don't need to recommend this to you. If you're not a Scream fan, go watch the Scream films before you see this, because why would you watch Scream 6 without seeing the other 5? Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. And of course, I'm going to follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Coming up next, we have the Movie Crusaders Oscars show where Brian Michaels and myself will be going over the top 5 awards: picture, director, best actress, best supporting actress and actor. And we'll be giving our predictions of who's going to win, who we think should win, as well as give you our nominations for who we think should have been nominated for those awards based off of the films that we saw in 2022. That'll be a fun episode. We did that last year. I think we enjoyed that. We're going to do it again. In terms of movies coming out next week, we got Shazam. So we'll have a review for that, as well as Cinemasochism and the Movie Crusaders will be back. So we have plenty of videos coming up on the channel, so I hope you guys stick around and watch that. And until next time, in case I don't see you, go watch the movies and have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.